Today, we're looking at a fascinating piece of writing by Tony Pretorius that tackles one of the most common, yet completely invisible sources of friction in modern households. We're going to break down exactly what happens when one person is silently running the entire domestic show while the other person thinks, everything is just fine. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the sheer amounts of things you have to keep track of at home, or if you've ever wondered why your partner is stressed out when you feel like you've been helping, well, this explainer is going to connect a whole lot of dots for you.
To really get this, we've got to start with a story. Pretorius paints this super vivid picture of a normal Tuesday in his house back when he had 5 kids living under one roof. He describes a level of daily chaos that would quite frankly make air traffic control jealous. And here's the fascinating dynamic. He'd come home from work, sit down, and he thought, actually, he genuinely believed that he was winning at life. In his mind, he'd done his part. He earned the money, the house was somehow still standing, and everyone was alive. He thought everything was perfectly balanced. But as we're about to see, his reality and his wife's reality, totally different worlds.
Because while he's sitting there, feeling all accomplished, his wife had actually just pulled off this entire list of tasks, and she did it without a single word of complaint. She remembered 3 separate birthdays. She rescheduled a dentist appointment. She noticed one of the kids needed new shoes. And, as Pretorius points out, she noticed this before he even registered that the child had feet. She remembered to defrost something for dinner, and she mentally tracked the exact day they were going to run out of toilet paper, literally right down to the last roll. And the thing is, these are all completely silent, invisible tasks.
And that brings us to the core definition. All of those invisible tasks make up what we call the mental load. It's basically an unpaid second job that's done entirely in your head all day, every single day. What's so interesting here is that for most of his marriage, Pretorius didn't even know this concept had a name. He just kind of ignorantly dismissed it, assuming his wife was just naturally better at remembering stuff. But as he later realized, naturally better was really just code for her taking on the exhausting cognitive labor of keeping their family's lives from completely falling apart.
Section 1. The problem with helping. Why doing your part isn't enough.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it captures a major conflict that couples fight about constantly today. And according to the author, it genuinely deserves to be fought over because the dynamic is incredibly lopsided. The tension usually comes down to this massive misunderstanding of what it actually means to contribute to a household. Look at how radically different these two viewpoints are on something as simple as washing the dishes. For the husband, his view is, I helped, I did the dishes when she asked. Boom, he feels he's done his part. But the wife's view, you did the dishes because I had to notice they were dirty, decide when they needed washing, and then actually ask you to do it.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is this. Noticing is the job. Executing the chore, actually putting the sponge to the plate, that is the easy part underneath it all. The real work is the cognitive labor of scanning the environment, realizing something needs to be done, prioritizing it, and then delegating it. If you're only doing the dishes once you're asked, you aren't actually sharing the mental load. You're just outsourcing the physical labor.
Moving right along to Section 2. Manager versus intern. The what can I do trap.
Pretorius uses some fantastic self-deprecating humor here. He admits that for years, whenever he saw his wife was visibly stressed out, he'd ask her what was wrong and then follow it up with that brilliant classic response, I don't know, what can I do? He actually thought he was being helpful by asking that. But as he points out with this great analogy, doing that is like asking a waiter who's currently balancing 6 plates if you can help and then just standing there waiting for instructions. By asking what can I do, he was forcing his already overwhelmed wife to now also do the mental labor of managing his helplessness. He was literally adding another task to her plate by making her figure out a job for him to do. The solution to this? It's beautifully simple. Pick up a plate, man! Don't just stand around waiting for a to-do list. The key is to notice that a plate needs picking up and to just do it without being told. It's about making that shift from being a passive helper to an active participant in your own home.
Because ultimately, this modern battle isn't really about chores at all. It's about roles. It's about who is the default manager of the household and who is the helper who constantly needs a checklist. And let's be real, nobody wants to be married to their own project manager. As Pretorius so sharply puts it, that is not romance. That is a performance review. When one partner has to manage the other, the whole partnership just breaks down.
Which brings us to Section 3. Dividing ownership, not tasks. The Year 8 Revelation.
So how do we actually fix this? Well, Pretorius shares the absolute game changer that finally saved his own marriage in their 8th year. It requires a fundamental shift in how we think about household responsibilities. It's about dividing ownership, not tasks. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. Dividing tasks sounds like, I'll help with the kids' school stuff. That implies the other person is still in charge, right? You're just the assistant. But dividing ownership sounds like, I own the kids' school stuff, permanently, without being asked. Now that is a massive paradigm shift.
When you take true ownership of a category, whether that's the bills, the groceries, or the car, you carry both the noticing and the doing. You eliminate those manager and intern roles completely. You are the one looking ahead, identifying what needs to happen, and executing the whole shebang from start to finish, without your partner ever having to give it a second thought.
To show what this actually looks like in practice, Pretorius shares his own personal outcome. They split their household this way, and it worked. For example, he owns the car maintenance completely. His wife never, ever has to remind him about oil changes or tire rotations. Now, he admits he still isn't perfect. He jokes that he still doesn't know where the good scissors are kept in the house. But, that's exactly the point of the deal. He doesn't have to know everything. He just has to completely own his specific domains so his wife doesn't have to.
Now, before we wrap up this incredibly insightful explainer on the mental load, the source text leaves us with a little tension-relieving dad joke that I just have to share with you all. So, why did the husband finally start doing the laundry?
Because his wife said if he didn't, the situation would come out in the wash. Okay, a bit of a groan-worthy pun for sure, but a really great way to lighten a pretty heavy topic. Jokes aside though, the transition from just helping to truly owning is what balances the scales in a relationship.
So we've learned that truly sharing the mental load means moving from just helping out to taking total ownership. But according to our source, there's another major hurdle waiting right around the corner. It's the other thing couples pretend they are totally fine about, but usually aren't. Are you ready to talk about money? That is exactly what we'll be diving into next time, so make sure you join me as we continue unpacking these everyday relationship dynamics. See you in the next explainer.